Hello everyone, thank you for watching my first video on YouTube. Everyone's been telling me that I need to put my paints on YouTube, that I need to show time lapses and stuff on YouTube, and for a while I have been hesitant about it, but this is actually a paint that I'm very proud of, and I wanted to talk a little bit about it while showing off the time lapse at the same time. One of the first things that I want to mention about this paint is that this was actually a really terrifying endeavor for me personally. The Sin City look is a very stylistic look, both in the comics as well as in the movie. And in this case, what I had been hoping to do was create something that was a bit of a mixture between the two, because I didn't feel confident enough in creating this look as the comic appearance due to the high contrast in it. But the film appearance wasn't exactly something that I wanted to try to aim for either, because I didn't feel like it was contrasty enough in comparison. So I was actually aiming for a little bit of a cartoonish version of what the movies actually have. One of my favorite aspects about this paint is that it actually utilizes a technique that I learned in college when I was doing pencil drawings. I used to be able to do somewhat realistic pencil drawings back when I was studying art in college, and one of the techniques that I used for that I applied here, and I was very surprised at how effective it actually was. With almost any paint or pencil drawing that I start off with, I usually start with the highlights and the shadows, going for the most extreme parts of that, and then adding in the midtones, and then trying to blend them together to create a more smooth look. The blending that I did in this is actually just mixing the parts together, and I was very surprised at how effective this actually was in creating that blended tone. Previously, I've tried to blend paint like this on my body, and it didn't really work, mostly because I felt like the paint was pulling up from my skin far too much. But for some reason on this paint, it worked very well. You can see that there's very good gradients. They're a little bit stylized, but the gradients are there and they are very strong. I took a lot of inspiration from Nancy from the movie Sin City, and you can see that I'm even trying to imitate somewhat some of the lighting in that movie, though instead of using the two light sources that the inspiration picture has, I used the idea that I was using one light instead of two to light myself, even though my lighting is actually balanced between both sides of my body. The end result wasn't exactly a realistic rendition of the high contrast look from Sin City on either side. As I said, I was trying to go for a bit of a cartoonish version of the movie, but I think that I actually ended up with something that actually looked very comic book-like. Part of the reason why I didn't want to go for the graphic novel look is because I wasn't able to get a wig to do this. The fact that I couldn't cover my very gold hair is part of the reason why I decided to go with a more cinematic look instead of just the graphic novel look, because ultimately I couldn't really hide that appearance. I'm still very new to body painting personally, and I don't feel too confident in my ability to do realistic paints just yet. However, I was very proud about this one specific thing in this paint. It took me a couple of tries during this process to get the bra in a point that I actually thought looked good, but I finally got it to that point. And once the shaping was there, I was trying to decide how much I actually wanted to put into getting the lighting correct on it, and I realized very quickly that that just wasn't going to be something that I could do easily with this paint. So instead, I focused a little bit more on the rhinestoning for the bra. One of the lessons that you can learn very easily from a project like this is understanding how your highlights and your shadows actually work. A lot of the time, people think that if you use white as your white for white things in a picture or on a paint like this, that's going to be a visually correct look. However, very often what I've actually discovered is that if you use a very light gray and then use white as an absolute highlight for everything, it's actually a lot more effective and looks a lot more realistic in the end. And the same thing goes for shadows. If you use a very dark gray to represent your low lights, your shadows and your blacks, and then use actual black or true black to represent most of your actual absolute darkest points in your paint or your picture or whatever it is that you're trying to create, it definitely creates a much more realistic appearance. My favorite comment from this paint is that people kept thinking that the bra was real for a bit, and I think the rhinestoning had a lot to do with it. The rhinestoning definitely gave it some sense of depth and detail that people don't normally see on paints like this. I was very surprised at the effectiveness of the rhinestoning, largely because the rhinestoning I thought was going to be a lot more difficult to do. Rhinestones are not exactly easy to replicate on a body paint like this, but what I realized was people weren't really going to pay attention that much to the details of something that small, and the fact that I was bedazzling in a very specific pattern with the spirals in that way, people were going to be a lot more impressed by that, and they were going to move on to other parts of the paint that they thought were more detailed and more interesting. Even now, people still tell me that they thought that the bra was actually real, and aside the straps not exactly being realistic, I definitely see how people thought that the bra was real at first. It definitely is shaped correctly on my chest, and with the contouring on my chest, it definitely looks like there was a lot more effectiveness in how the bra supported my chest, even though it had no support at all. I decided to narrow my waist on this, and I tried to use true black to make that more effective. You can see just a little bit of that in the pictures, and even in this, you can see that there is paint there, but it definitely is effective in narrowing the waist just a little bit and giving it a little bit of a smaller look, at least to the first glance. Once again, with the blending technique, you can see how that smudging process to create a realistic gradient for the shadows definitely works. This is something that you can do with pencils, you can do this with body paint. This is really a great technique to create effective shadows and gradients that look really nice without having to get 10 different colors or different tones of a paint or a pencil. This is my first attempt at creating a video like this. Thank you all so much for watching to the end. If you want to see more content like this, please let me know. I definitely am interested in creating more commentary like this. This is just a little bit of an experiment to see how I felt about doing it, and I hope that you all enjoyed what I've created here. Please let me know if you want to see more of this and if you would like to see more from other paints and makeup looks that I do. I'm not a professional by any means when it comes to makeup and body painting, but I am self-taught and I am learning so many lessons along my journey. If you want to see this live, you can subscribe to my Twitch channel. You can also subscribe on YouTube if you want to see more time lapses like this and other videos that I plan on making in the future. Follow my TikTok, my Twitter account, and my Instagram for other content that I create with the body paints and makeups that I do, as well as commentary that I make on trans issues especially. Thank you all so much, and I can't wait to post the next video.